Hey, welcome back. It's another week of the Flooring by the Numbers live show.
Hey, Mick, very excited again. Hey,
Yeah.
We showed up. That's the big thing, isn't that right?
That's it. We always show up. We're always going to be here for you on Wednesdays. And, if you want to tune in or you're tuning in on the replay, we're absolutely delighted that you're here, because today we're going to be talking about one of our foundation topics. In fact, it was, one of the reasons that Andre and I got together in the very first place. And our business name is Flooring by the Numbers. And so we're going to be talking a little bit about numbers today. And, we're going to be talking about the ultimate scorecard. What's the ultimate scorecard in business, Andre?
Mick, that is the very most difficult question. It's your financial statements.
Exactly.
And Mick, here's the thing about your financial statements is that, when people tell us about dashboards and, all these different types of metrics, okay, you can have all of that, but go to the bank with those metrics and see how far you get.
Yeah, can you spend that dashboard? Can you?
So and all this emphasis on these dashboards and all these other good things. That please, I'm not trying to dilute it, but if you do not have your financial statements, and yet here's the thing, Mick, how few of us use our financial statements as an actual management tool, better still as a management system, and we don't do that. But here's the one last thing, and then I'm going to let you take the sandbox as such. But the nice part about your financial statements is that every single transaction, right, that you do in your business. Think about this, hey, Mick. Every single transaction that you do in your business is recorded in your financial statements somewhere. It's either in your income statement or it's in your balance sheet. It's every transaction, not some. Every transaction. So, and if you think about it, every transaction has a decision. Isn't that right?
Yeah, it's a result.
It does. Yeah. I mean, there's a decision around, I'm going to make a decision around price, and ultimately that price becomes an invoice. And, and some of those decisions are automated. It's driven by the system or whatever the case. But there's a decision. Somebody said, it's okay to charge so much. It's okay to buy this. It's okay to do these things. Those are decisions. So essentially, your financial statements is a record of all these cumulative decisions.
Right.
Is that right? So why can't it be a great management tool?
Yeah, and just a little bit of a backstory. Andre and I bumped into each other in our local Starbucks here in Charlotte about 15 years ago, and at the time, I was designing strategic change programs for Fortune 500 companies, and I was presenting a lot to the senior leadership team, and I didn't understand what a balance sheet was and financial statements, and Andre started showing me the numbers, and I saw how powerful it was. And we created something we called the Financial Statement Story, which is still a podcast that you can download shows on today. It talks about how you can use the numbers to understand your business. But it was very, very powerful, and we've utilized these concepts. And so within our business today, in the commercial flooring space, we know that we can help you by helping you run your business by the numbers, because we know that you've been in business. Maybe you're in a multi-generational family business. Flooring. You've got good intuition. You make good decisions. What we want to arm you with is a little bit of data to make those decisions, more powerful and give you the right directions going forward. So we created this scheme, this model, if you will, to help people understand the financial story. So, and of course, every great story has characters in eternal conflict. And I'm going to introduce the characters to you. You've probably heard this, before from us. but there are three characters in your business from a financial perspective, and they are vanity, sanity, and the king. And you may have heard the expression, cash is king, but revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, cash is king is our catchphrase. And you bring that sentence to life for us, Andre. There's a lot of really deep profoundness to it. So tell us, with your deep financial background, what all this means.
Okay, Mick. I mean, it is a beautiful metaphor, and I love. I really, this is something we should do a little more of this. I mean, I think because people love, just really getting just for the foundations. But if you think about it, revenue is vanity. Vanity is not a bad thing. I mean, vanity is, we love that vanity, but the issue is that we talk there, it's more about good revenue. All right. So there is a bit of humbleness around how we create revenue. So revenue in complete absence of, the other characters within your financial statements could become a very big problem. You know what I mean? So really what we're wanting to talk is, this is the team, isn't that right? There's the revenue team, there's the profit team, and there's the cash team. And these characters may land up changing, let's call it changing their clothes every now and then, and different players, participating in different spaces.
Right. That was one of the key things that we wanted to communicate in that, most people look at the financial statements, they see three things: the income statement, the balance sheet, and the statement of cash flows. It's very difficult to see the interaction. And so we created this metaphor for how vanity, sanity, and the king play out, to be able to demonstrate the interplay between the income statement, the balance sheet, and the statement of cash flows, without you really having to, to have an accounting degree. So the point there, Andre, you made was that they are a team, they are integrated, and sometimes, they wear each other's shirts or ties or capes, in this case, from that example. And, a lot of people, vanities in the flooring business, we love the salespeople, we love the sales team, we love team vanity, right? And that would include the salespeople, the estimators. They're all going in front of the, customers, trying to bring in new revenues. And often they're very outgoing people, and they think they can sell their way out of problems. Just give me 5 more estimators, I can get you 27 more bids, and we can do anything, which is great in isolation. But of course, vanity, has to coexist with, the other players in the enterprise. So, if they're going out there and, your teams are putting out, low margin work, sanity, he's counting the bottom line, and he's thinking, the gross margin on this, boys and girls, isn't quite where we need it to be. And our last character looks after the cash. As we know, a lot of our customers take a long time to pay us. And if we attract more and more customers who take even longer and have more rigor and pain around their retainage, our cash cycle gets so long that, yeah, we're profitable, but hey, we're running out of money. Isn't that true, Andre?
Sure. Now, the next thing that you need to think about, Mick, is the terms of how each of these characters sees the future, the current, and how they prepare for, things. The vanity as such is more about the future, but vanity can create costs for sanity today. All right. So in other words, I'm preparing for the future. We're growing, and so, more salespeople, more stuff. Those costs hit our financial statements today. Yet the benefit of those costs that are, driven by vanity's plan might only impact us, I don't know, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months from now, sometimes even longer than that. So you've got different horizons, and those horizons impact, how we, how we see our business today. And one of the things that sanity, profit element, there has to be some kind of strategic thought around that, because we have to invest, Mick. You know what I mean? We have to continuously invest. So sanity really has, a good sanity really has this problem of trying to balance, the ability to invest, which is for the future, right? And deliver the type of profitability that they need for today.
Right.
And that's one of the big it is becoming a big issue in the flooring industry. It never used to be, but things are changing, right? They really are changing. And you're going to find that there's going to be two sort of streams of organizations. There's going to be those ones that are investing, and you can see these guys investing right now. They're doing it in different ways. Some people are buying others, but they're doing it in different ways. And some people are investing in, core capabilities and technology and all those things. And some people are, the way it's been will always be the way it will be going forward.
Right.
And
to be fair, when you're in a multi-generational business and you've seen the same kind of patterns and you're working with the same teams and customers, things don't look as though they're changing that much. And it's not only comfortable, but we're generating a decent amount of profit and a good living for us and our employees. So why would we want to shake that up too much? Because we don't like disruptive change.
No, and nobody's advocating disruptive change. I mean, we definitely not advocating disruptive change, but change is something that's going to happen, and change often requires some investment. And then at the end of the day, of course, you've got this issue around cash and treasury management, right? You know what I mean? So, and which is very in alignment with, our profit in our profit sort of decision making and our cash decision making.
Right.
But often what we can do is we can use the present to help the king. You know what I mean? And so the big balance becomes between vanity and sanity, all right? So, what the future decisions that we need to do for revenue, and how do we, balance that with our profitability for today. But one of the things that we find is lacking is the way that we treat the king.
Okay, well, let's have a look at the environment that the king lives in, and when we do our story side of the business, we talk about a couple of building blocks. Everybody understands the income statement. Andre and I like to talk it to describe it as the money making machine, right? Because you get sales in at the top. Which is our revenues. You've got to pay your installers and your material, which is our cost of goods, to get gross profit. Our salespeople get paid on gross profit. They love that gross profit number. But there are other costs, people and expenses that Sanity has to measure and has to invest to get a net operating profit, which on average in this industry is probably about 4%. It's not a huge amount. But then we've got to pay the interest on all the money we borrow to finance these projects. We got to pay our taxes, and there might be something left over for distributions to the owners or shareholders. And if there's anything left, we save it for a rainy day. We put it back into our balance sheet. And most people really, really do understand the money making machine. Where people get a little less clear is this thing called the balance sheet, which we call the wealth creation engine. And I've got a little picture of that. I don't know if you wanted to say anything about that before I put that picture up, Andre.
Yeah. So Mick, let's just just going back to our money making machine. So look at that last block that is right at the bottom. Save rest for the rainy day. That's what we call the ability to power the balance sheet. That's the equity that we retain in the business. That's how we build equity. I mean, there's only two ways to build equity. You put in money from investors, or you retain money from your income statement. Those are your only two ways you can create equity. And in our world, which is mainly privately owned, we don't really solicit, we don't put shares on the market and all that sort of stuff. Those other, let's call it equity raising capabilities. So our primary way that we create equity is to, have the income statement give something back to the balance sheet. That block right at the end there. And here's the thing, unfortunately, in many organizations, people think that the only cost there is the cost in the job. That's it. So if it's not job cost, there is no cost.
Right.
You know what I mean? And somebody thinks, well, if I'm bidding something at 18%, look at the sum. I'm making 18% for the company. I mean, that's a lot of money, isn't it? But our overhead might be 20%. So the concept of and yet they look at the same income statement and in a degrees of disbelief.
Well, most of them don't look past the gross profit number, do they? I mean, yeah, and to be fair, not a lot of people operate an open book, so not everybody sees that. But I think owners do want, people to know that there's a big investment to make this machine work, and it's not just about the gross profit number, as you say. We've got all these other costs, and then the other fascinating thing is when we're working with our clients and we're saying, well, 18%, you've sold some projects at 35, let's do more of that, or let's sell more at 22, and they go, oh no, we'd be gouging the customer. At the end of the day, the operating profit that the company is making is relatively low. There are other industries, other companies that are making much more than the 4% in the world. So we want to be able to generate a healthy operating profit, have some money left over that we can invest in the balance sheet, because that allows us to grow, because we've got to have funds to pay for more salespeople, to pay for more commissions, to pay for more estimators, to pay for more project managers, to put in the software in order to be able to manage those jobs, et cetera, et cetera. So big investment that if you're an employee, your owners are making in your future.
Yeah. So, I think there's so much richness that can be gained inside, the understanding, the true understanding of the income statements. But we'll leave that for another day. So let's move to the balance sheet, which is
right. And this is the picture that really, so we just told you that, we're making sales, we have some costs in the business. And at the bottom of the money-making machine, we have this rainy day fund, or its technical term is retained earnings, which, as Andre said, is the fuel. It's like rocket fuel that we then put back into our balance sheet. So this on the right, this landscape that the king is looking at is the balance sheet. Maybe you want to describe a little bit about that, Andre.
Right. So, you think about it, Mick, your balance sheet is really such it's such a beautiful system. It really is. Because, first of all, the way we look at the balance sheet is really much more simpler. It's basically says two things. You need a base to fund your business, right? Okay, that supports the requirements for your business. And there's only two ways you can fund your business. It's very simple, isn't it? It's, hey, Mick, what are the two ways you fund your business?
Right, it's right up there. It's your money, right? Right, or you can use other people's money in the form of debt. So I go to the bank and I borrow money, or I use my own money.
Right. So and then if you isn't this beautiful? So let's forget about the top piece, that investment piece. If you just look at the bottom piece, there's those two blocks, right? How much is your money, equity, and where do we get our equity from?
Yeah, the equity comes from a good money making machine.
And an accumulation of good money making. So there's that consistency element that, as we, right. Okay. So now when you think about those two blocks, if your equity piece is very big block and your debt piece is very small block, what does that say?
Oh, that tells me I've got low risk.
There you are, and there's your debt to equity. Isn't that right? That's what,
right.
I mean, that's automatically your debt to equity. So you can see the personality of the business. Now, so most people strive for that environment. Big equity, low debt, right? Isn't that correct? Okay. So which is...
Yep, for our audience, absolutely, right? Because that's it balances their appetite for risk.
Correct, because primarily we are privately owned, and it's my money, it's the owner's money. It's, you know what I mean. So, but the one thing we don't really understand is, if I'm making money from other people's money at a very low risk environment, then debt can be a very good thing.
Right. So we talk about there's a concept of good debt and bad debt.
And there it is, straight in your balance sheet. You don't even, we don't have to go anywhere more than this stupid little diagram we have here. Right? So
hey, it's not that stupid. It took us a few years to create this, to distill the financial statements into this one picture.
Well, I get it. Well, maybe we're a little slow in the diagram business,
right.
But if you think about it, because that's that's why I love what this is all about, is because people look at it's got a jet fuel engine and this and that, but it really makes so much sense. So the thing is, Mick, if your funding base grows, the beautiful thing about your balance sheet is the balance sheet. Do you know why it's called a balance sheet?
I would think, Andre, probably because it balances.
Beautiful. Nice. Right. So therefore, you remember this top category that we got there called investments, right? And your bottom category called funding. So if you think about your funding funds the amount of investment. If that investment grows, what needs to happen to funding?
Well, we need more of it.
Oh, beautiful. So now we're getting to the situation where we're saying, okay, if we need more investment, right, we need more funding. And what are the two ways that we get funding? It's either debt or equity.
Correct.
Right. So now comes the situation of, do we need more funding?
And just as a punctuation point there, what we've done here is normally in the financial statements, they were never designed as a management tool. So they hinge on assets and liabilities. And it's not really a very good mechanism to draw any management insight. So what we did was we restructured the balance sheet, just balanced it in a different way around funding and investment, because it gives us greater insight on where our opportunities are, where our sensitivities are. So this is a much more powerful way of creating a decision-making tool.
Right, because in theory, if you can run your business with that investment box staying exactly the same, essentially your funding box needs to stay the same. And the outcome of that, if you've got a good money making machine, that can go straight to owners or bonus distributions or whatever the way you want to deal with it.
Right.
The reality is growth requires more investment, whichever way you look at it. And therefore we need more funding. But the thing is how much more investment it requires. And the key here, Mick, is how do we create a lean balance sheet whilst we're growing? That's the thing. We know that the investment, let's call it that investment block, on this very clever diagram. So I'm not going to call it, I'm not going to, on this very clever diagram, right? That investment block is going to grow, but that is something we can manage. We can have explosive growth in that investment, or we can have very, very lean, beautifully managed growth in that investment area. And our primary mechanism to manage that in our business here is, most of us, we get sometimes we've got maybe, concrete business associated to it, but most of our organizations are not capital intensive. They're just not. So our investment primarily gets driven around the management of what, Mick?
Working capital. So you see our 3 boxes at the top.
Yeah,
as Andre just said, right? That non-cash, those buildings, lots of equipment. Typically, flooring companies are much more asset light. Obviously, we want to have some cash on hand to be able to have flexibility. But and these boxes are not representative. That working capital box tends to be a lot larger in the commercial flooring industry, and it's something that I know you all pay attention to, and it's something that we really need to manage.
Right. So we want, what is our expression on the balance sheet? Lean,
mean balance sheet machine.
There you are. Lean, mean balance sheet machine. All right. So let's just quickly talk a little bit about working capital, hey, Meg. Now, guys, I think what we'll do is, not for today, but maybe another show. We'll get. But working capital is such a simple concept, but it's working capital is 3 things. It's your receivables, right? It's your inventories minus your payables. Think about it. Those are the 3 components that move every day of the week. Something moves in either your receivables, your inventories, or your payables. And we use the word inventories just to sort of embrace one concept. And that's the concept of primarily your underbillings. So what we try and do is we put your underbillings as part of your inventory. So because that's an area where your cash is going to get impacted. So if you think about it, receivables plus your underbillings, and if you have inventory if you actually record inventory in your balance sheet, less your accounts payables or the amounts that you owe your vendors. That's the primary investment driver in a commercial flooring business.
So let me, in my simple terms, Andre, see if I've understood what you said about working capital. So let's take our receivables. That's what our customers owe us for the work that we have already undertaken and sent, the invoice off to the customer, right? They owe us that money, but we haven't received that money. So it's right. And our underbillings is we've done the work, but we haven't actually send out the invoices. And then our payables is what we're paying out to our customers. So the bigger that working capital, the more receivables that goes up, that working capital element gets fatter and fatter. And either we have to take a little bit of our cash up there, or we got to go for more funding. So that's why in the summer months, when we get a lot of work, often we have to go to the bank and get a higher line of credit to finance all of that activity. So managing that working capital is fundamental to the health of the business. Right.
And so then you start seeing, Mick, in order, if that investment side is going to grow, remember that can only be funded through the amount that you retain through your profitability or the ability to borrow money from the bank, right? So either way.
Yeah. So Andre, we're going to go from our theory because we have an audience question that I'm going to pull up, and it's very timely, and it's for our longtime viewer, Carol. Welcome again, Carol. Because we talked about the lean and mean balance sheet machine, does that mean she's going to get less marketing funds because she needs, right, to be able to do advertising, to be able to entertain, to be able to, do all of the things, join the associations, all of that activity in order to make sales? So how do we make Carol feel? How does Carol, who is trying to sell work, benefit from a lean, mean balance sheet machine?
All right, so Carol, I mean, I think this is isn't this an interesting question, because your marketing funds, the amount of money that you require to do your marketing activities, is more of an income statement driven requirement. So it is, more marketing. There's normally a relationship between more marketing and some kind of benefit, right? So, and now the timing of the marketing and the benefit may be different, but that's more of an income statement decision system. So it doesn't impact the balance sheet per se, right? What we're really talking about here is, how do we create that cash that allows us to fund these investments, like those marketing investments? So even though the fact that we write these, we charge those investments really into the income statement as and when they happen, but we still need to fund it. So what we're looking for is a way to run our balance sheet on a lean basis to allow us to make these, let's call them income statement investments. So hopefully that helps you. It really there, does two completely different concepts.
If you can see my cursor there, pay people and expenses. In that section would be our, what's called our, SG&A, our overhead, and our marketing expenses would fit into there. So that's what Andre was talking about. And then the leanness of the balance machine allows us to have the cash necessary.
Right. So yeah, and Mick, just so I know we sort of, so Carol, hopefully that helps, and if not, give us a call afterwards and we can powwow on that. But the big thing about this, Mick, is they call it working capital, and the reason why we call this working capital, if that working capital grows, that's when people go to the bank and they call it working capital funding. So sometimes people get very confused with this concept of working capital, because they call it current assets, and working capital are two completely different things. So just for those people that might be thinking, just to make sure that you understand that concept. Yeah, so Mick, the big thing is that when we look at our planning and we think about our planning, how we engineer, a healthy income statement that has, that has the ability to invest, and and our cash situation is always good because we're running a lean balance sheet. And I think what we'll do next time is talk about the key metrics that we need to look at from a short, medium, and long-term basis within the balance sheet in order to help us with that.
All right. So we've introduced our characters. We've shown you a little bit about how the characters interact in the two building blocks, the money-making machine and the wealth creation engine. We talked about a story, and all stories not only have compelling characters in eternal conflict, but we've also got chapters in the story. And so Andre and I came up with these five chapters, and you could read your financial statements like a book, and the chapters on the left are what we call input chapters, and the ones on the right are the outcomes of good disciplines by Vanity, Sanity, and the King in chapters 1, 2, and 3. So, Andre, why don't you introduce what is chapter 1 all about?
Right. So chapter 1 is, really about our growth strategy, okay, and how much we are growing, right? And then what we're wanting to do is to take growth and obviously convert growth into what we call superior profitability. Now, superior profitability is our version of scaling. Because what we want to be able to, it's a very easy metric. I mean, if you're growing by 5%, right, and your profitability increases by 5%, you're scaling. But our concept of superior profitability is that, we want that turbo scale, right? So we're looking for growth of 5% with a revenue growth of 5%, with a profitability growth of something better than 5%. Because that's turbo scaling, that's superior, that is, that's the thing. And when we can do that, over the longer term, then, I mean, that's, that's best of breed, hey, Mick? It's got to be, all right? Right. And you think about it, I love the way that you presented that, Mick, in the beginning, where you said, the first 3 areas are your inputs. So essentially, these are the active management chapters in your financial statement story. These are the critical things that you actually physically have to actively manage. And on the right-hand side, well, you can only read the book, baby. It's going to be the outcome of how well you've managed chapter 1, 2, and 3. So our ability to grow, create that superior profitability with the right rigor of the management of the balance sheet. And when we do those 3 things well together, right? What are we going to get, Meg?
Excellence in chapter 4.
Yeah, cash flow excellence. That is the holy grail. That's the holy grail. And I mean, that's why, you can't get more simpler than this. And then at the end of the day, you add chapter 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you get this thing called wealth creation. And we'll introduce it just very, very lightly today. But it is important that we know how to measure whether we're creating wealth. And there's no secret here. That is a very, very specific objective. So if we just boil down our planning and we boil down our way of managing and we boil down our dashboarding and, thousands and thousands of measures into those 3 chapters, we're going to get a very nice looking right-hand side page.
And simply, this is just a simple articulation. It might sound, trite, but just to bring that into relief, if we are growing and we target the right type of work, the right segments, the right kind of, we might knock it out of the park with multifamily, but I don't know what it is for you, but we focus on that growth. We own that space. We make sure that we are, pricing that work well. We're going to areas where we're really competitive so that we can get a really good margin on that work. We're managing our, operating environment well. And then we make sure that WIP management, those underbillings and those receivables are managed tightly. We're going to have a very, very healthy cash flow business, which ultimately will generate, wealth. But we'll go into more detail. I got one more slide, Andre, just so that people can see, what a one-page story might look like. So we pictured and you can do this with your business. We would recommend doing it. Is write down those 5 chapters and put, this year versus the prior. It could be this year versus the prior year, this quarter versus the prior quarter, just to take a look at what that quality of revenue growth is. And then you can kind of color code it. Do you want to say something about that one?
Right. I mean, So if you're, if you look at just, and we'll just finish this, because I think we'll give people, we'll see what sort of responses we're getting on this. But Mick, I mean, if you think about it from a strategic perspective, there's your scorecard. I mean, your ability to grow is critical. Your ability to take that growth and scale, right? Critical. Being how we take that growth, and we, if our profitability is, 3% previously, and we've made it 4%, okay, well, we're moving in the right direction. That's called creating superior profitability from your growth. And then you start looking at at the way you are managing your balance sheet. And we call it the hunger measure, which is really effectively the way we measure working capital, which is really a very simple. I mean, it says working capital as a percentage of revenue. So, I mean, there's your formula. Working capital divided by revenue tells you how much working capital you require for each dollar of revenue. And it's such a beautiful measure because it integrates both your income statement and your balance sheet management at the same time. So all you're trying to do there is at least keep that either consistent or slightly less. So if and here's the thing, what people sort of struggle with: if my working capital retention, or that working capital as a percentage of revenue, if that's 20.3 cents, and my margins are 18 cents, I'm consuming cash when I grow.
Yeah. So when you first explained this to me, it took me a while to get. So essentially, the money making machine, if your average gross margin is 18%, what it means is for every dollar of flooring that you get paid for, right, you're making 18 cents of gross profit. And then we go over to the balance sheet, right? And the working capital requirement in this case is 20 cents. So every dollar that you receive in terms of revenue, you need 20 cents in working capital. Well, you only generated 18 in the income statement. So you're now consuming 2 cents for every dollar of revenue. So if you were going to sell another $1 million worth of revenue next year, you were growing, and those numbers stayed the same, you would have to make sure that you had 20,000, right?
Yes,
2 cents in a you'd have to have that to fund your business. If we manage our working capital, we may be able to grow without consuming cash, which would be great. So whenever chapter 2 is generating less than chapter 3 is consuming, your business will always consume cash when it grows.
I mean, isn't that a beautiful thing? I mean, Mick, and there are going to be times where strategically that makes sense, right? But it can't be the case over the long term. So there could be short-term fluctuations because strategically that's the right thing to do. I mean, for example, right now we are busy experiencing, shortages in materials, in some areas. And people are stocking up on certain things. Okay, strategically, that's for their business model that works, but it can't work over the longer term. So disruption between the balance of chapter 2 and chapter 3 is always something that we look at from a strategic perspective, right? Because remember, chapter 4 and 5 are outcome metrics. They are as a result of 1, 2, and 3. And really, this is why I think it really becomes very simple. When we plan, all we need to really plan on is active management and planning and execution around 1, 2, and 3. We get those 3 things right, man, we've got a happy king. And we have a let's call it a sustainable way to create wealth.
Okay, so that's what we wanted to communicate today, was that there is a story behind your business. There are characters who you will all recognize or affiliate with. What I suggest we do, I just had an idea, Andre, I hadn't pre-suggested this to you, but we have we have an approach that we do with new clients. We call it the business health test, where we actually take their financial statements and we put them into this framework and we show where the opportunity exists. It's a little bit more detailed. It's not really relevant for a live show, but what Andre and I'll do is we'll do a little training just to show you the real impact that the movement in some of these metrics can have in your business. So Andre, you and I will do a little BHT exercise and we'll create a link, and those people that are interested in that can see how all of that works. But from a simple perspective, if you looked at your business this way, just these 5 metrics, you get real insight into how your business is performing. All right. Well, thanks for joining us this week. Thanks for joining us on the replay. If you've got any questions, you want to bounce around any ideas, we're always available to you. So it's bye from me.
And bye from me. Bye, guys.
See ya.
All the best.